transitioning to some e-learning, distance learning, flexible instructional days, virtual days, lots of names for that. And using Google Classroom, especially if Classroom's something that you're already using or have dabbled in at least a little bit, can be a great place for that. So we wanted to show you some things that might help support you in that journey. So I am going to jump into my Google Classroom. I set up a Google Classroom here just called e-learning, just to give you some cleaned up space. We know over time, sometimes as teachers, our Google Classrooms have lots of things in it. So this is very uncluttered. And first, I want to start with the stream. So in this case, it is presumed that I already have a Google Classroom up and running. If I needed to add students to a classroom, they're going to use the class code. I can see that I have a student here as well. Classroom is easy to make, and you can find lots of tutorials on starting Google Classroom on our YouTube page at AOP Tech. So just some general suggestions for e-learning that I'll scroll down to here. Keeping consistent communication in the same place if you can. And I want to point out that you might have to remember that the expectations and structure may vary school to school. Some of this are community-wide decisions, so that way students and families across the board have consistent means of communication. For you inside of your classroom, if you've always used the stream for announcements, use the stream for announcements. Keeping some of those expectations and communication practices consistent are a big help there. I would consider having online office hours for students if you're not having an expectation based on your school already for holding some direct virtual instruction. That can be done with Hangouts Meet if that's enabled for your school during this time, or access to email, being inside of Classroom for students to ask their questions as well. Whenever possible, use tools that are familiar to you and the students. It'll make some of that transition, especially if that transition needs to happen quickly, a little bit easier. We are going to put on our YouTube page some more information about Hangouts Meet and great tools for distance and e-learning up on our YouTube channel. We are in the process of getting those together right now. So be on the lookout for more support videos. Consider that whether this is a short-term e-learning plan or a longer-term e-learning plan, or by your grade, there might be some different expectations. You may have to be a little bit different in what you post in grades 3 to 5 versus 6 to 8, depending upon their home access, their use of Classroom previously, all things like that. So just know that you might have to be a little bit flexible, and students will have to be a little bit flexible as well. And practice. If you can get this up and running so that way you can have a good practice or two with some different types of assignments in advance of having to transition to e-learning days, that's a great idea, especially if it's been a little while since you or students have used Google Classroom. So something specifically in Classroom I want to make note of. Typically, if I go up here to the top right-hand corner and I select the gear wheel, I have my class settings. One of the things that sometimes teachers change is whether students can post or comment on that stream. Sometimes we restrict it to only the teacher, but if you are transitioning to an e-learning day, it might be a good idea to give students a slightly bigger level of access here. So maybe they're allowed to make comments, or maybe even post and comment, depending upon the grade level and experience your students have with Google Classroom. And the benefit there is if students have questions, they can ask them to you. So that might be a way to do that virtual office hours. You post on the stream, hey, 6th grade, I'm here. Ask me your questions. And that way you can answer them as they come in. So that's something that if you had it on the most restrictive setting, you may want to consider bumping it up a little bit to at least comment, or possibly even post and comment. And I know that's a little bit different than sometimes what we're doing as teachers there. The other setting that I might want to consider, and this is an overall Google Classroom setting, so I access that by going to the 3 horizontal lines in the top left-hand corner, I can see a snapshot of all of my classes. If I select settings for this, I can customize the notifications that I receive. And sometimes we as teachers, so we're not inundated with a million notifications from Google Classroom, we turn a lot of these off. I would suggest that in an e-learning situation that maybe you consider putting some of those back on, things like private comments on work, comments on your posts. So that way we really can help not miss things when students are reaching out to us in a totally virtual platform. I'm going to jump back into my classroom there, and I'm going to go into the classwork page. So this is where assignments, materials, questions are all posted in there. And I'm going to quickly review. There are different types of posts that you can do in a Google Classroom classwork page here. We also have in-depth tutorials on our YouTube channel for these, but I'm just going to point out some different things that you can do. So using this create button at the top, I can create an assignment, a quiz assignment, which creates a untitled Google form for you to edit. Question, and that's a short answer or multiple choice question, great for formative assessment. I can add a material to that. I have the ability to reuse a post. You can pull something in from another classroom, which is great. And topics are what I have here. I just have sample materials and assignments that just give some organizational headings for your assignments. Sometimes we do it by chapter. Sometimes we do it by assignment type. In this case, just to keep it nice and simple for you, I have materials and samples. So if I jump to this attaching materials piece, I've posted this material for students here. And when we attach materials for students, they're really pieces to use as reference. So sometimes they're presentations to help them study, a PDF, a rubric, things like that. Maybe you've scanned and you have in your Google Drive a piece of document or an article that you want them to read, maybe not necessarily turning in anything for it. But you're giving it to them as a resource to go back to, or even a link as a resource. So that way it always lives on your Google Classroom page there. So how do I create that? I'm going to go up to the create button at the top. I'm going to select material. I give a name. I'm going to put a sample material link here. I can give a description. And then I'm going to hit add or create. If I select create, you can see I get a menu of G Suite options here, docs, slides, sheets, drawings, form that would open up a blank one and attach it to this material post. Or if it's something that's already available to me, I can pull it from use the add button, and I can add it from my Google Drive, which is the most straightforward way. If it's a document, I can add a link. I can add a YouTube video for reference, which is a great way to give them something to be able to watch if you want them to, review, or separate file. In this case, I'm going to use a link, and I'll link our website where you can find lots of e-learning resources and information about AOP Tech events. And I'm going to add that link. And that's all I need to do there. I can add in different types of attachments just by selecting there. And I can add more than one. I've heard of some teachers who do this by week. Week of whatever the school week of the year, March it is, and they add in some materials for that week. I can determine if it goes to all students or some students, which classroom, and then I can select that topic. So remember, those topics are just organizational breakdowns that you set. So in this case, I'll select sample materials. If I didn't have something that I liked, I could always create that organizational heading right from within here as well. But I'm going to select sample materials, and I'm going to select post. Now you can see that that's there as well. And if students were to click that, it would take them to the website. So great for textbook websites. as well, so that way they're not fishing around, especially if you do not have a separate kind of front-facing classroom website on Google Sites or Weebly or all things like that. Let's talk about some assignment samples here. So I'm going to pull up a question, and I started one here, and then we'll walk through making your own. I made a sample question, and I'm going to hit view. This one's already created. Short story, a short answer question based on your reading. What do you think is the theme of the story? Provide pieces of text evidence. So that was my overarching there. I provided some pieces for students, some information. I selected question here. You can see I put their expectations in that box. Use proper spelling and grammar. Provide 2 specific pieces of text evidence. Respectfully reply to 1 classmate. There. This is also where I could see the progress of student answers. So I see that it is assigned to my demo student, but that student has not turned it in. We'll jump into the student side momentarily. If I wanted to create a question, I would go to the Create button up at the top and select Question. I can select a short answer or multiple choice. I would type in my question, instructions, additional information that I needed as well. One of my favorite things to do for the short answer is to add a video. So I have a YouTube video here on the water cycle. I'm going to select share on that YouTube video so I can get that link. I can also search for that video right here within that as well, but I already had that video pulled up. I had been previewing it, and then maybe I ask a question. Describe the water cycle. And I would give all of my applicable instructions or information. On the right-hand side here, again, I'm choosing, it's going to default to the classroom you're in, but if you needed it to go into more than one, maybe you teach 2 sections of 5th grade science and you would like both groups to complete this, you can drop that down and select 2 separate groups. I can give it a point value or leave it ungraded. I can give it a due date. So if by selecting that, I might say by Monday. I can give it a time as well. I'm going to put this under sample assignments, but it might be science, it might be video questions. And then when you ask a short answer, you have to decide, can students reply to one another or not? And students can edit answers. So you check or uncheck those boxes as you might need to. If we were to do a multiple choice, the same thing would apply. And then you just get the option of putting in your multiple choice answers and whether students can see the class summary or not. As in any post in the classwork page, you have the ability to create a new document, slide, sheet, drawing, or form and automatically attach it. Or I have the option of attaching one that's already in Google Drive, attaching supplementary link, file, or as I did here, a YouTube video. And then when I'm ready, I can hit ask. Know that next to ask or post or assign, depending upon your type of posting, you'll get the ability to drop down a menu. You can say ask, which means it's going to get posted immediately. You can schedule it for a specific date or time to post, which is great, or save that draft to come back to it at another time. I'm going to select ask, so it goes right to my page, and you can see there, describe the water cycle in your own words. It's now under my sample assignments. So that's a quick overview of what that question piece is. The last thing I'm going to touch on before jumping to the student side is an assignment. So an assignment might have a little bit more in-depth pieces of student turn-in kind of information. One of the big things that I find that all students need to be refocused to is to hit that turn in or submit button. We'll take a look at that later. But you'll see that in an assignment, it's the very same format as any of the other posts. I'm going to give my post a title and instructions. I have the ability to create a new document, slide, sheet, drawing, etc. And I have the ability to add one that already exists. As with the other posts, I can select a due date and time. Same with topic. So actually, in this case, I am going to post a link to a Google Forms quiz. It happens to be one I already have made. I could select create and go to forms and open a new one, or I could have selected on the classwork main menu to create a quiz assignment and done the same thing. But because I already had this prepped and ready to go, I am going to post it in this manner. So, nice thing about Google Classroom is that I have a couple of options in how I post something. So I'm going to say to students, complete the quiz and attach a summary. So this is actually a two-part assignment. I would put all of my instructions here, how I wanted them to complete this parts of a story quiz first, and then I want them to attach their own Google Doc that has a summary. So here's my parts of a story quiz. I'm going to select send and get this URL. I'm going to add that link. I could also have done so by going to add and pulling from my Google Drive. So lots of different ways. I'm just trying to show you that there's multiple ways to accomplish the same thing. One isn't necessarily better than the other, just however your brain likes to function and format there. And then students would have to attach their Google Doc. So I'm going to say, don't forget to attach the doc, even though I would probably be giving students more information. For this moment here, I want to make sure that we can just see the basics. So I'm going to say this is due at March 17th by 9 p.m. And I'm going to, again, put this under sample assignments. And I'll click assign. I made another sample assignment that had a graphic organizer to it. So let me open that and go to the instructions. This was a graphic organizer for chapter 3. I put the student expectations there, and I attached the sample Venn diagram I would like them to use. An important thing that I did when I attached that sample, and I'm going to open a new assignment just to show you. So I'm going to hit create here, and it wouldn't matter if I was hitting create or if I was selecting add from Google Drive because I already had it created. But I'm going to say drawing, and I'm just going to say that this is a sample. And I'm just going to write that in the name of that drawing so I know in my drive what that is. It's always important to make sure that you name documents, drawings, etc. But I want to point out one piece of information here. When you attach something from Google Drive, or you select create and you're making kind of a template for students, when you attach it, you can see here on that file, I have some options. Students can view file means they're only going to look at it, kind of like a PDF. They're not going to be able to type or edit in any way, shape, or form. So I want to make sure that in this case, if I were having them, in the case of the Venn diagram, make it, I'm going to want to make a copy for each student. Students can edit file means just what that plural students implies, that multiple students will be working in the same file. So right here I have plural students, singular file, which depending upon the type of assignment may or may not be what you are looking for. I tend to use this make a copy for each student pretty frequently. So I'm going to select that, and what it's going to do is essentially force a copy and give them that template. So each student is turning in their own individual Venn diagram in the case of the previous assignment that I looked at. So now we're going to take a look at what this looks like on the student side. So I am already logged in as a student in this classroom, and you can see anything that I put on the stream, which are announcements, any consumable kind of information, even just a good morning or hi, I'm here for your questions, that's going to appear on my stream. I get shortcuts to the assignments that I have posted, and I can also see them in the classwork page under the same headings, those topic headings, organizational headings that I used as well. So for students, you can see with this sample, I can see the materials, I can click on them and get what I need there. Remember, those don't have to have anything turned in and whatnot, but they're there for students as a resource. Sample assignments for the Google Forms quiz, I'm able to click it, and don't forget to attach the doc. So I'm going to jump into this one, and I'm going to jump into a couple of them just so we can see what that would look like for students. So I would go to View Assignment, and this is a great thing in prep of an e-learning day to go over with your students. This is one of those things that is great to practice. I can see the due date. I can see any of the directions that I've put. If I were the student, I would click and take this quiz, but I also have that, don't forget to attach the doc. So over here on the side, right-hand side, if it was just the story quiz, I would come in and mark it as done. Yes, I completed this. I could put a private comment to the teacher there. That was one of those notifications that teachers can turn on and off that in a time of e-learning might be a great idea to have on. But in this case, I have to attach a doc. So I can either, much like on the teacher end when creating the assignment, students have the option of selecting add or create, and they can pull something they've already made from Google Drive or create a new document. So in this case, I'm going to create a new document. And it'll take a second to do. What it's doing is making sure that it's organized. And you can see in that, one of the benefits is that it has that student's name. In this case, demo student, but it has the name right at the top there. So I'm going to just type, this is my doc for time's sake. And when I'm done, I select, and this is really important, and the part you're really going to have to practice or remind students, maybe even put it in the instructions, you're going to select that Turn In button. So now it's going to ask students to confirm, do they want to turn that in? They say yes, and it's turned in. I am going to go back to look at some of the other assignments as well. So describe the water cycle in your own words. We were playing with that one as well. Here's that graphic organizer assignment. If I view the assignment, you can see that the template that I attached to make a copy for each student is there. It put their name. Again, a benefit of attaching a template and making a copy for each student is that when they open it, it will put their name in the title of that document, or Google Drawing, Google Slide. It applies to all of those there. Again, turn in private comments. If students were completing a short answer, so here's a short answer question, view question, and this was, what do you think is the theme? Provide pieces of text evidence. Students would, on the right-hand side, type in their answer and select Turn In. Now I can see classmates' answers. As you can see, I couldn't see anything else until then, but I have the ability for them to see it's the first one. If I had made an expectation on this to reply to another student, I could hit the reply button, much like a discussion board. So that's kind of what it's like on the student end. It looks very similar to what you have done on the teacher end in creation, just formatted a little bit differently. On my teacher side now, if I refresh that page, I can see that that student has turned in that assignment. So I'm going to look at both this short answer and this assignment quickly. So in the short answer, I can see that the student has turned it in. That's a snapshot. And I could say, here is my answer for that student here. If I use the 3 little dots, I could mute that student. So if this were truly functioning as a discussion board and a student made an inappropriate comment, you could kind of block them from making comments to other students. But typically, you'll see their answers here. You can give them a grade here. Please know that grades that you put in Google Classroom do not automatically jump over to your school student information system or online gradebook, and that you would have to manually move those grades over. If I go back to the full assignment, that was a complete the quiz, attach the summary, turned in. I can see that student's document and I can click it open. I would have a snapshot of all the students here that I had enrolled in the class. In the grading window, when I open up an attached doc, slide, Google Drawing, etc., I'm going to see that document. I can add in comments. I can use suggesting mode to give them suggestions as to how to change their writing. And I also have the ability to put a grade. Again, this grade does not jump over to a student information system and online gradebook. It's just a very similar piece to what is here in the assignment window, but on an individual student basis. And I can add in a private document or a private comment, excuse me. You did not complete the assignment. And I would post, and that student would be able to see that. And that comment goes just to that student. So this is a really kind of back-end way to give them some comments or feedback or things like that as well. So that's kind of how it looks on the flip side once students complete things. When I'm done, I might hit, or when I am done with something, especially if students have to resubmit, I'm going to hit return to students. And I can either if I use the drop down, I can return this submission or multiple submissions. So maybe I go through and do all of this work on every student first, and then I return them all at the same time. It could be a draft. They may have to do some resubmitting. Those are all possibilities that you can set in your Google Classroom based on your expectations and what you've done previously. So I hope that gives you a good idea of where to start and some things to get the ball rolling on your e-learning day possibilities. As always, feel free to reach out to AOP Tech for any of those questions that you have about e-learning, Google, or all things ed tech. You can subscribe to our channel below to receive all of our new videos, and you can follow us at AOP Tech on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. Thanks so much.